I didn't know I was perfect. I was wrong all the time. Always wanting more. Why? I kept on stomach.
Hey, and welcome to another interview in the series. I'm so excited to be here with Lea Marie Neumann, who is an awesome coach and one of my mentors at the moment as I progress through the course that I am on in the Vita world. So welcome, Lea. I'm so excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat together about these amazing topics and important topics, and just
and we're going to be talking. And we're going to be talking self-acceptance today, right? We're going to be talking all about how you can like start to move into practices to support becoming more accepting of yourself. And it's such a big topic, especially I think for women. We struggle to find self-acceptance.
It is such a big topic, like huge and so fundamental to so many other things. What I notice is in society, often when we talk self-acceptance, we focus it a lot on physical appearance.
Yes.
And if we completely disregard that at least 50% of self-acceptance is really behaviors and personality as well, criticizing ourselves for the way that we are and we move through life rather than just the way we look, which of course impact each other. That's why it's such an intricate topic in a lot of ways. And
I agree.
I wanted to bring that up because I've noticed so much how often we don't talk about self-acceptance with this term when it comes to our personality or our behaviors.
And I was just going to say then, I think when it comes to, for me, when I think about self-acceptance, it's kind of like you want to get outside validation for as well, which completely defies the object of it being self-acceptance, right? It's like, how can I accept myself when the world isn't accepting me for how I'm showing up in this moment? And then you kind of conform to fit into the boxes, but actually to become fully self-aware and to accept who you are as a person, it's the internal work that needs to be validated. You need to be working on different parts of you, and through the work that we do, we learn that there's so many different parts of us, right? As we grow and we develop, we have different thoughts, different feelings, different sensations, different parts of us, shadow sides of ourselves, and it's about accepting all of that, right? True self-acceptance.
Yeah, exactly. All of that. And I think that's where oftentimes things happen, especially in the beginning stages, when people start going on a path of like noticing, oh, I'm not fully acceptant of myself and this is not healthy for me, or this has an impact on my own emotional well-being and I want to change that. And what I so often see is that even though this is an important first step, it's kind of the seed of everything, being like, okay, I think I need to accept myself more, is that it goes into a complete overflip where you see people who first were unaccepting of themselves in certain aspects of their life or their being. And now they have the mindset, they have learned they should be accepting of themselves. So they start disintegrating the pieces who don't, who want to change, who are like, we are not okay the way that we are. And that's often problematic because that's not acceptance either. It's just in acceptance with a different target.
Absolutely. And I find that with when I'm coaching, when I'm working with some of my clients, and we're working on things that they want to, they want to grow, a lot of the time they will say things like, I don't want to feel this way, I need to change this. But what they mean by that is it's like they don't want that part at all. It's like they want to just pick it up and go, right, that part doesn't belong in me anymore, goodbye. And I have to then kind of backtrack and say, actually, this part is you, this part belongs to you. And so what we need to do is we need to learn how we can accept and love this part, and give this part just as much nourishment and just as much validity as the parts that we do like about ourselves. And when we can learn that this part of us is beautiful how it is as well, and we are okay to show up in that part, then that's when you're going to have that true acceptance. But all of the time you're telling me I need to get rid of this part, I need to change this part, it's not going to happen. We need to be working on accepting and loving and just being present in those parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable.
Totally. So like the one thing that you can't do with self-acceptance is cherry picking.
Yeah.
What parts you want to accept about yourself and what parts you don't want to accept about yourself.
Yeah, we wouldn't be ourselves, would we?
So often.
Yeah.
It happens so often. And it makes sense. I get it. That when we notice these patterns and we're like, oh, these are the pieces that keep me from having what I want or being who I want or showing up the way that I want, that there is this mindset of radicality of I need to eradicate that because that's what's in my way.
Yeah.
It's so often, rather than going into integration processes, we try, like you said, to rid ourselves off. And the funny thing is that the moment we have that attitude, these parts just become so much stronger.
Yeah.
Because they just like us as people, when we're attacked, right, we fight back, obviously. And that's exactly the same things that every part of ourselves does. They don't go like, oh, you don't want me here? Okay, fine, I'll go. They're like, oh, hell to the no, I'm here and you gotta listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm wondering if there are any tips that you can give our viewers on how they can start to really accept those parts that maybe they've been trying to avoid.
Yeah, this is something that, and I might share a personal example, because for me it's like it's an ongoing journey, and it's about consistency and building like a self-acceptance muscle, and it probably will never stop. There's always leaning in and working on it more, and there's no practice that will take you from I don't accept myself to I totally accept myself now. And I'm not even sure if there's ever a moment in life where we reach the end point of now I'll always and forever accept myself fully, because we develop, and there will always
and things around us change
up, and circumstances change, so we adapt to the circumstances. This is fluid. There will unfortunately never be a point where like, now I have it all, nailing it forever. Nothing's ever going to change. It's an ongoing work and ongoing process. And I recently had like discovered another layer for me where I learned so much about my blind spots when it came to self-acceptance. And in that case, for me, it was actually about physical appearance. I never struggled that much with it.
Yeah.
But that's only because I was suppressing.
Yeah.
Because I had this really strong mindset of I'm supposed to love myself the way I am. I'm supposed to accept myself fully. So I'm just going to pretend like I already do, because I don't want to see the parts of myself who are like actually not content with the way that I look. And for me, that was, I think ever since I was around 14, I started having thoughts of wanting to get plastic surgery on my nose, because I have a rather large nose.
Profile.
but I always like I never actually let myself consider it. Like I always had these thoughts, but I never actually let myself consider it. I'd always press the thoughts and the feelings down and be like, oh God, no, plastic surgery is bad. I need to just work on accepting myself like this. My nose is fine. And in general, yes, but also no. Because it came to a point where I noticed that not allowing myself to consider going through with that and giving myself the spaciousness to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll get my nose changed. Hurt me more than the other part of me was like unaccepting. It was like, wow, I realize not letting myself is actually damaging myself more than letting myself.
Yeah, I agree. I had always struggled with my breasts as a young teen. All of my friends developed and I didn't, and I stayed like the smallest cup size for like forever. And so I would be very self-conscious of my chest area, and I often thought about, oh yeah, maybe if I had plastic surgery I'd feel better about myself, and then would be like, oh, don't be silly, Serena, that's a stupid idea, why would you even think that kind of a thing. And it's taken me a very long time to accept that part of my body, and that part of my body is the first part to change. You know, as I put on weight, they grow a little bit, and when I lose the weight, they're the first thing to go. And so I've had to learn to accept that actually they are what they are. They're there to feed, to nourish my children. They're there to you know, for like sensual pleasure with my partner or whatever. And then and that's what they're for. And so that's what I'm going to use them for, rather than to be more paranoid about what size they are and if they're matching up to the person next to me.
Definitely. And I think that's an important thing when it comes to how we relate to our bodies. Is I recently heard, I think it was a quote, I'm not sure by whom, but it said something along the lines of, your body is not an ornament, it's functional. Yeah. I was like, yeah, exactly. We have made our bodies to be something that is supposed to be representable rather than functional.
Yeah.
And one of them, when it comes to physical self-acceptance, I think one of the best things we can do is use our bodies and feel our bodies, do the things with our bodies that they're meant for. And that can be like so many things, but doing the things that make us feel most in our body. Because the thing that happens when we go into this unaccepting mindset, self-judging mindset, criticizing mindset, is we're actually out of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're looking at ourselves from outside of ourselves. Because if we're inside of ourselves, we don't really see those things, we just experience ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's why these really basic things, like moving a lot, going outside, using your hands to make things, those kinds of things can be so impactful to do regularly with the intention of being in our bodies and admiring the way that it allows us to do things and to live and move through life and breathe and feel.
And so much of that stuff that you've just mentioned there automatically happens. We don't even have to think about doing it. We don't think about breathing, it just happens. Our bodies are amazing vessels that are storing our souls, and yeah, I agree, like just becoming more present with your inner self and just being is so powerful.
Yeah, that's what embodiment is for, right? Embodiment, and that's what often happens. People are like, well, I have a body, aren't I always embodied? No. Embodiment takes, for most of us, intent, because we're so disconnected, and awareness, factual awareness, what is happening at all times. And this is the interesting thing, is that why when we look at children up to a certain age don't tend to be insecure about the way they look, because they're still way more occupied actually using and feeling themselves in their body.
Yeah.
It starts around the age, most of the time, when either they start being exposed more to social media, growing the awareness of how advertisement impacts them, or just later on in school when the social structures become more focused on who's the cool kid, and who's the, we've all experienced it, we know. But that's why
absolutely.
Usually when we see kids up to around 8, 9, we don't really see them being disembodied in this way, unless of course they had traumatic experiences of any kind.
Yeah, and I agree. My children, so 3 of them went into mainstream school. Well, 4 of them went into mainstream school. And then 3 of them now are homeschooled. 2 of them have been through the system. And then my youngest son, he's 5, and he hasn't ever been, he's the only life he knows is his own bubble, in his own world, doing his own thing. And it's just so apparent. My husband said something to me about how he was such a bubbly, happy, just, in his own little mind, his own games, his own things, and what he was doing. And I said, that's because he doesn't go to school. And he was like, huh? And I said, as soon as they hit school, as soon as they go into that social environment where, children have heard their parents talking about other people's appearances, or they've heard their parents talking about people on the TV and how they look, or whatever, they've heard those conversations. And then they bring that into the school, they bring that into that environment because that's how they feel that they should be talking. And that's when things start to change. That's when we start to become really paranoid about certain parts of our bodies, and who we are as a person. We start to question, are we good enough?
Yeah, and it's definitely also the first time in life where we have to feel like we have to work to belong. Because in our family, we just belong. They're our parents. That's how we grow up. The moment we hit school, we enter a place where we know that we have to make ourselves fit into, for it to be okay for us to experience and live through. And obviously, so we observe who's popular, what's different about them than about me. Is that how I should change? I remember when I hit high school, which is after 4 years in Germany. So I was around 10, I think. And I still dressed in a very elementary school kind of way. And at some point I was like, got really self-conscious. I was like, I have to change my style. I have to be cooler, because otherwise I don't fit in and I look like a kid and nobody wants to be friends with me.
Yeah.
And it's for most of us, it's the first time we come into a place where something like hierarchy between kids exists.
Yeah.
And we feel like we have to fight for our place and our sense of belonging. And belonging is so important for all of us. And that's why self-acceptance can be so difficult in the first place, is it's our sense of wanting to be fully acceptant of ourselves and our need to belong fighting against each other, because we have the narrative that if we stay the way that we are, we won't belong. And belonging is a survival need for us. Because if we look back, now we can be self-sustained, although we still need social context. A couple hundred or more years back, you couldn't really survive if you didn't have a community.
Yeah.
So needing to belong is still so ingrained in our minds, and teaching ourselves that A, we can fit in if we are ourselves, and 2, we don't have to fit in with the people around us. We can choose who we want to fit in with.
Yeah.
Which is the luxury of the life we live now, is we don't have to choose the people that are locally close to us to belong with. We can either move if we want to be somewhere else. We can have friends who are further away because we can travel. We can connect with them through social media or Zoom like we are right now.
Yeah, my daughter went to uni last year. She started uni, and she was moving into the dorms. There was 8 of them all together, and she met with them, and she, you know, the first couple of days she had a couple of drinks with them. She did the, you know, being social, getting to know people, and within a few weeks she just was like, they're not my people. Do not want to socialize with them. Then they were too loud, too rowdy for her. She's very quiet, and she's found her little tribe, doing the things that she loves, and she's moving in with them this year. And so she knows that when she moves in this year, she's going to have a much different experience, a different social experience. But I've always brought my children up to know that they are perfect how they are, and if they don't want to do something, they shouldn't have to. And if they, you know, their circle of friends needs to be that, you know, close friends or whatever, and if they don't want to talk to anybody else, then that's fine. You can kind of just get on with it and be yourself. You don't have to be that other person to fit into that crowd just because. And yeah, they tend to they're definitely themselves. They stand out in a crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, yeah, and I think that's what happens in school is we are forced to fit in with a group of people that we have not ourselves chosen. Yeah. And in some senses, I think it's important to learn to be adaptable to people, but in the long run, like it's too strong for most of us that we kind of lose our sense of self, and we develop this idea of not being okay that way that we are. Yeah, definitely. It starts so early.
Yeah. So with the people watching this today, are there any tips that you can give them where they can start to really work on finding and accepting even maybe the darkest parts that they try to keep hidden?
So what was important for me, most important for me, was to let myself explore the dark parts. So if we get back to my example of wanting a nose job, I had to let myself seriously explore the idea of getting a nose job. And I did like lots of research, and I really invested myself in the idea of maybe I'll do it. You know what? Maybe I'll do it. And exploring that, and that's important, is exploring that and giving it space doesn't mean you have to act on it.
Yeah.
What happens is you give it enough space that it's being heard, it feels considered, and it takes a lot of charge out of this piece. So for me, it's like now I'd still consider it, but I don't feel particularly attached to it. But it has a lot less charge for me. Ever since I did that, I feel quite neutral about my nose. It's not like I'm like hyped about my nose. I don't hate it either, and I feel neutral about the idea of having it changed, because that's what I knew is like, if I were ever to get my nose changed, I would have to love myself the same whether I do it or not, because I knew if there's any part of me who would shame myself for having had my nose changed, that's going to be really problematic.
Yeah.
And even just knowing that if I think about it, I can already tell that I would feel bad and feel like I have failed my own values if I get a surgery told me that, oh, look, oh, wow, oh, damn, there is a piece that you are so disintegrating and disempowering.
Yeah.
So what I tend to invite people into is to take a moment and think of like the 3 main things they tend to criticize themselves on. And that can be personality or physical physical attributes. So let's see. For me, that would be, well, my nose, but not so much anymore, but theoretically, my nose. Then that sometimes I feel like I talk too much. That's something I criticize myself on a lot. Like personality-wise, I talk too much. So those were two things for me that I consistent. Oh, and being lazy, something that I also really like to criticize myself on. So I'm so lazy, and really sticking was just the main 2 or 3 things, because for the most part, everything kind of comes down to the same stuff anyways. Because what we're trying to do through noticing these things is to drop in and then connect to what's behind that and who's behind that. So if I drop into my body and I take a couple of breaths and I just connect to the idea of, okay, if I think of I'm lazy, who's saying that? Who's saying that I'm lazy? And I might find that in this case, it's the voice that was conditioned for me that I live in a productive society and I have to achieve. And people who are lazy we see that all the time. People who are lazy are bullied for being lazy. It's like, oh my God, they slack off all the time. They get nothing done. Oh my God. And obviously, I don't want to see myself that way.
Yeah.
There's the part of me who doesn't want to see myself as lazy. And there's the part of me who, and I don't like to call myself lazy. I would say that I'm slow. I don't think that I'm lazy per se. My adult mind knows that. But there quite obviously is a part of me who's just like, you're so fucking lazy. Oh my God. And connecting to this piece and being like, okay, you're here. And hopefully I know where you're coming from, which in this case is society telling me that I have to be an achiever. I have to be productive. I have to earn my place in society. And realizing, in this case, for example, this doesn't come from me. This is not something that I ever chose to believe. This is something that I was taught to believe.
Yeah.
So it's not mine.
Yeah.
And that already often helps me, like, this is not mine. This doesn't come from me. This doesn't come from my truth necessarily. Realizing that is already helpful.
Yeah.
And then what, in a way, this giving room is, I'm not sure if you had that already in the course, but a practice called the throne of the heart.
Yeah, we have.
Which is one that is always a taker. We can do it together. Let's do it together.
Okay.
Where, in this case, maybe you have your one thing that you criticize about yourself. And you start dropping into your body, maybe taking 2-3 deep breaths into your heart area. And imagining this big, big round table in your heart space. And this table is there to host all the parts of yourself. Everybody has a seat. So does the voice who keeps criticizing you for whatever it is that you chose. So in my case, the voice that says I'm lazy. And just imagining everybody sitting together at that table. All the pieces of yourself. Everybody has the same kind of chair, is offered the same kind of food, and has the same right to speak and be heard. And checking in with yourself, if you can let this part of yourself speak. How does it feel for you to have them sit at the table? Does it feel really edgy because you feel like they shouldn't be there? They shouldn't be allowed to speak? Or does it feel okay? Do you feel open to hearing them? And just knowing that whichever comes up for you is okay. That's what self-acceptance is, right? Also accepting that maybe you don't feel so cool with them being there right now. And if that's where you're at, that's fine. That's okay. And if you are open, letting them speak, letting them express their thoughts and feelings and fears. Just listening. If you feel like you're not open to hearing them speak, connecting to the piece of you who doesn't want that. What are they afraid of? Might happen if you hear this other piece of you out. Because maybe they're afraid that you'll take on that mentality, that you'll believe what they're saying, that it would be destructive for you to listen. And knowing that every piece of you, the part that's criticizing, the part that's criticizing for criticizing, they usually all have very valid reasons for why they feel the way they do. And you can probably see that yourself. That in the end, what it comes down to is each and every part of you thinking they're acting in your best interest out of love for you and out of fear that something bad would happen if you don't adhere to what they think is best for you. That's your team. All the pieces of you are your team, trying to find the best solution for you to be okay in this world. And seeing them sitting all at the table, isn't that pretty amazing to see how many aspects of you with different opinions and different values and different skills are there to support you and make you the best freaking person and give you the best ideas and the best ways to move through life. And that only happens if we hear them all out. And then make a choice. Based on everything we heard. That's how we choose and act and feel and believe from our own truth and not outside voices or rebellion against outside voices, but our own truth. You can sit with it for a little longer or it feels complete. Taking another breath and coming back to orient yourself in the space that you're in. Looking around.
So beautiful to be able to just go in and just listen.
Yeah, and I think that's the primary thing we can practice and learn is to never shush and always listen. And that applies to ourselves as well as the people around us. When we want to connect or relate to others, what we want to do is listen. And the thing is that when it comes to other people, I think most of the time we're inclined to listen. It's mostly with ourselves that we're like, I don't see anything, I don't hear anything. The Chinese monkeys.
Yeah. My little boy, my 5-year-old, not my 5-year-old, my 8-year-old, he often says to me, Mum, and I say, yeah. He says, you know, I've got another voice in my head that tells me things, right? And I say, yeah, we've all got one of them. And he was like, yeah, it talks to me a lot. And I said, you just need to listen. What is it telling you? What are you learning from it? They're so aware that that's happening because as you grow, you don't realize, do you, that there may be different voices inside of you, different parts of you that are giving you advice all of the time. It's constantly there. It's only when you stop.
And that's the thing, it becomes like white noise. We're so used to it that we're not really aware, and that also we can't really distinguish the different parts. And that's something so important to learn. And that's why it's helpful to do this little exercise of what about myself am I criticizing, and who says that?
Yeah.
Because that's how we become more aware of the different pieces again. It's like there is different pieces. It's not all the same.
Yeah, and some of those pieces might come, like you said, they might come from society. They might be things that we've learned through being in school, or maybe being at home, or from our education, or even maybe from the circles that our parents, brought us into. So maybe, if different religions and different paths that we all walk, we all learn slightly different, and that's where there's so much beauty in everybody, and instead of being able to celebrate all of that glorious beauty and that individuality, we start to then look at ourselves and go, oh, we don't look like that, we don't speak like that, we don't feel like that, when we should. And so coming in and just having all those pieces and really just fine-tuning, like listening into them. Where are they coming from? Is it part of me? Is it part of society? Have I learned this from maybe my mother, or is this something that I was actually, that's been born into me and it is part of me, and just really recognizing those parts.
Yeah, exactly. Most of these things come either from conditioning, whether that's societal or religious, or our own experiences. We learn, obviously. We either taught or we learn based on our own experiences. And we tend to take things for fundamental truths, both if we've learned them and if we experience them.
Yeah.
If I experience this once or twice, the assumption is it says something about me.
Yeah.
We see that so often when we even just talk about abuse, for example, that most people go into the mindset of, if this keeps happening to me, it must mean that something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
That's how we learn based on experience. And it can be really difficult to rewire that and be like, but that's not the truth. Yeah. I can recognize and acknowledge that that's what I learned, and it makes sense that my system picked this up, and we usually pick things up because they keep us safe in some sense. And how can I bring myself into a place where I can change my truth around that, where reconnect to my actual inherent truth, beneath the layers that have been put onto me.
Yeah.
And I think that's always so important to realize when we're acting. Am I acting out of conditioning? Or like, because patriarchy, for example? Am I acting out of rebellion against it because I want to do the opposite, like a teenager? Yeah. I'm just gonna be like
a rebel.
Or am I actually acting out of my own truth?
Yeah.
Because acting out of rebellion against something isn't really any better than acting out of the pure conditioning of it. The only thing better about it is that there is an awareness for the conditioning. But going against it, the actual behavior in it is not really much of an upgrade.
Yeah, I know. It's always, everybody wants to be a rebel in some kind of way, right?
Well, we do need to be rebels in a way. But just noticing that acting only out of rebellion is acting not in alignment as well. Yeah,
I agree, 100%. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you so much for taking time out with me. What I'm going to do is, when you've given me all of your information, is pop it down into the comments so people can go check you out, go find you, go and see what else you're up to. So yeah, thank you so much. And if you've got any last words, let them know now.
Last words. You know, it's a journey, but it's a journey worth embarking on. And it's hard sometimes, but celebrating all the small successes where we notice that our attitude towards ourselves has shifted even in the slightest, and knowing that it's okay that even after years you'll fall back into habits of criticizing yourself. I still criticize myself. What changes is the way you relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's all we can really ask for. That's enough.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And I will see you soon. Bye.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye.